Hi, everyone. We will pause for a moment while Zoom adds everyone to the meeting. Make sure everyone has some time to join. If you just joined the room, we are pausing for a moment while Zoom adds everyone to the meeting. We'll give folks just a few more minutes to join before we kick things off. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started, and if anyone else joins, they'll be caught up. But welcome to West Point Treatment Plant's online 2023 update meeting. I'm Jillian Haviland with the King County Wastewater Treatment Division Community Relations team, and I will be your facilitator this evening. Quick note that this meeting is being recorded. To reduce background noise and improve everyone's experience, all attendees are muted. If you're having any trouble with Zoom and need help, feel free to send a message to me via the Zoom chat. After the presentation, we will have time for a Q&A, so feel free to submit questions as you think of them, and we'll answer them once the presentation is complete. This is a diagram of where you can find the Q&A window on your Zoom screen. During the Q&A portion, we will respond to questions posed in the Q&A queue. Let's quickly run through some Zoom Q&A etiquette. So please note that we may paraphrase or combine similar questions when applicable. Please submit all of your questions through Zoom's Q&A function and not in the chat. Questions posed will likely only be visible to the group after they are answered. Please keep your questions focused and on topic. We're here today to talk about West Point Treatment Plant and its related projects. Please submit your questions as short, complete sentences. This helps us reading them out loud to the group. And questions that are too long or are very specific to an individual can be difficult for us to answer in the moment. If you have longer or more specific questions, please feel free to email our team after the meeting to get these types of questions answered. We'll provide some contact information at the end of this presentation for you. One last note on this is that we will not tolerate derogatory, defamatory, or profane language or gestures during this meeting. So if your questions contain explicit language, we will not address them. Once again, my name is Jillian and I am your host with WTD Community Relations. Also in the virtual room, we have Anne-Marie Lee, who will provide some meeting support, as well as Ryan Harlow, meeting presenter, both of them with WTD Community Relations as well. Ryan, do you want to introduce our other wastewater treatment division staff on this call?
Yeah, tonight we have with us Mark Slepsky, who is the project manager for the Power Quality Improvement Project, and we have the plant manager of West Point, Tom Bauer, joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for being here today. Now that we're all oriented to Zoom and have introductions out of the way, in today's meeting, we're going to show a project updates video that will review West Point Treatment Plant historical context, project updates, operational highlights, challenges, and community engagement. Then we'll move on to the Q&A session. Ryan, I'll leave it to you to introduce our project updates video.
Thanks, Jillian. So this is a pre-recorded presentation of the project highlights and some operational highlights from West Point from the last year, just to talk about the different happenings at the plant. Please give me a little grace in my recording abilities, so it's a little up and down. But hopefully it'll cover the highlights of each of the main projects we have going on at the plant currently and in the coming future. So, go ahead, Jillian.
Perfect.
This is the West Point Treatment Plant 2023 update. King County Wastewater Treatment Division, or WTD, continuously strives to protect public health and the environment. WTD recycles and recovers valuable resources from the wastewater treatment process, like water, gas, and biosolids, to benefit the Puget Sound region. Now, before I cover some of the construction projects and operations at West Point, I want to provide some context for why West Point is located where it is. In 1880, the population of King County was roughly 6,900 people. By 1910, it was a little more than 284,000 people. There was no formal wastewater treatment process during this time period. Waste was simply placed in the nearest waterway, polluting much of the lakes, rivers, and streams we enjoy today. Because of the growing population and increasing public health risk, Seattle began building a combined sewer system, where wastewater from homes and businesses would be run through the same pipe as rainwater from storms. The goal was to flush this combined wastewater into the Puget Sound, the largest body of water nearby where it could be diluted and go out to the ocean. The picture shows what is known as the Fort Lawton Tunnel that brought all of Seattle's wastewater to the North Beach area of Discovery Park. Study commissioned by Reginald H. Thompson, the City of Seattle engineer spearheading this work, determined that a point off Elliott Bay near the Fort Lawton Army Base was the best place to release Seattle's wastewater. This point was determined to have a northern current at high and low tide. The picture in the previous slide showed the original outfall of the Fort Lawton Tunnel that was completed in 1911, releasing wastewater into the North Beach area of what is now Discovery Park. The picture above shows the untreated wastewater plume below the site of what will become the West Point Treatment Plant in the year of 1963. By 1950, King County's population increased to 733,000 people. Waterways all around the county were still heavily polluted with wastewater that may or may not have been lightly treated by removing solids. A community effort grew to establish a county-wide agency that would improve treatment. A measure was placed on the voting ballot and passed in 1958. This agency was called Metro, or the Municipality of Metropolitan Seattle. Metro would begin by creating 2 treatment plants, West Point in Seattle and South Plant in Renton, to start collecting and treating wastewater throughout the whole county. West Point's location was selected because it could take advantage of the previously built infrastructure of the Fort Lawton Tunnel. The Army was also looking to relinquish portions of the Fort Lawton base because it was underused. This made it easier for Metro to acquire the land and not to place a treatment plant near community spaces and purchase any businesses or homes. West Point started primary treatment in 1966, treating up to 125 million gallons of wastewater a day. In 1968, a Seattle ballot measure passed to provide $3 million for the purchase of the rest of Fort Lawton from the Army. In 1970, Federal Congress passed and President Nixon signed a bill allowing cities to acquire surplus federal land at no cost for park and recreational purposes. After the United Indians of all tribes in the city of Seattle were able to establish an agreement, Discovery Park was officially dedicated in 1973. If you'd like to learn more about the indigenous history of Discovery Park and West Point area, plus the United Indians of all tribes sit-in protest, I recommend visiting the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center in Discovery Park. Now, primary treatment means the removal of all suspended solids from wastewater. This includes sticks, rags, wipes, garbage, sand, grit, dirt, and human waste. Public pressure and the passage of the Clean Water Act required better water quality standards. WTD had to upgrade its facilities to secondary treatment, which means at least 95% of suspended solids are removed and the wastewater is disinfected. This was particularly challenging for the West Point treatment plant because of its restricted capacity to expand now that it was surrounded by Discovery Park. WTD had to get creative, designing part of the upgraded facility to be underground to reduce how much the plant had to spread out. The plant began treating wastewater to the secondary level in 1995, which leads us to today. It has been roughly 30 years since West Point's last major upgrade. While equipment is continuously maintained, it is time to upgrade, replace, or refurbish major aspects of the treatment plant. Some equipment has been in service since the plant began primary treatment in 1966, and after nearly 70 years of continual service, also needs to be replaced. I will now discuss some of the current and near future projects taking place at the West Point treatment plant. The goal is always to continuously treat wastewater 24/7, 365 days a year to protect public health and the environment now and well into the ever-changing future. These are the projects I will discuss now. I will cover their purpose, benefits, cost, and construction schedule. At the end, I will list additional projects happening at the plant. In the last 20 years, a significant number of bypass events at West Point were caused by power issues. Washington State Department of Ecology issued an administrative order in February of 2021 to address these power quality issues, and King County Executive Dow Constantine declared an emergency on February 25, 2021. He directed WTD to quickly implement corrective actions to power quality and voltage sags to protect worker and public safety and reduce discharges of untreated wastewater into Puget Sound. A battery-based uninterruptible power supply, or UPS, was selected as the best alternative for this project. An older, underutilized building was demolished this year, and a new building is nearing completion that will house large batteries and support equipment to improve power quality at West Point. The batteries and additional electrical equipment will begin arriving by the end of 2023. By the end of 2024, the system will be operational. 3 intermediate pumps, or IPS pumps, help move water throughout the plant. The 3 pumps were installed when the plant upgraded to secondary treatment in the early to mid-1990s and have been in constant use since. Wear and tear on the pumps was increasing the likelihood of a pump failure. This could potentially cause the plant to shut down and lead to an untreated bypass of wastewater. The first pump was refurbished in 2022. The project team and plant staff were able to learn enough lessons from the first refurbishment that they were able to refurbish the second and third pumps this summer in 2023. Originally, the project schedule was 1 pump refurbishment per summer from 2022 to 2024. Getting 2 pumps refurbished this summer saved WTD more than $5 million. This project will restore and replace the primary effluent and raw activated sludge pipes. The project has been pushed back 1 year due to worksite space constraints from other projects. This project will replace old parts and pipe pieces of the instrument and service air system. This increases the service life for 20 or more years. This project will be closely coordinated with the raw sewage pump replacement project, which we will talk about next. The Raw Sewage Pump Replacement Project, or RSP project, will replace the 4 gas-powered pumps that have been in service since West Point came online in 1966. These 4 pumps have met the end of their useful life. Currently, all 4 pumps need to run to treat wastewater at West Point's max flow. The new electric motors will be more efficient and powerful, only requiring 3 pumps to run to meet max flow. This keeps 1 pump in reserve in case there is an issue with another pump, or allows a pump to be maintained without compromising operational flexibility. Design and implement seismic retrofits, both structural and non-structural, in accordance with current standards needed for the administration building, where the operations center for the plant is located. The upgrades will allow immediate occupancy and continued operations after a seismic event. The project will plan, design, and construct a passive bypass weir on the emergency bypass channel to protect the plant from flooding in the event of a failure of the emergency bypass gate and all other gates in the influent control structure, or ICS. This project will also route the drainage pipeline of the multi-use facility area into the influent control structure for treatment. The grit classifier equipment removes heavy inorganic materials such as sand, gravel, and minerals from the wastewater flow during preliminary treatment. This project will plan, design, and implement all work necessary to replace or refurbish failing grit classifier equipment at West Point. It will also make any modifications to structural, mechanical, electrical, and process equipment to keep the grit classifier working well and reduce the impact that any leftover grit would have on other equipment. This will improve treatment quality and protect additional plant equipment. These are the additional projects underway at West Point. Many of these will wrap up in late 2027 or early 2028 based on current forecasts. As you can see at the bottom, this is a significant investment into the treatment plant over the next decade. Including the cost of the other projects I discussed, the total is just over $1 billion. WTD is attempting to find alternative funding means for many of these projects to limit the impact these projects and other projects across the whole wastewater system would have on rates. Several highlights this year for West Point's operations team. West Point received a Platinum 5 award from the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, or NACWA. The award signifies 5 straight years of complete and consistent National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit compliance. This is the permit managed by Washington Department of Ecology that allows West Point to discharge treated wastewater into bodies of water. Additionally, WTD Operations received NACWA's 2023 National Environmental Achievement Award for its Operator in Training program, also known as OIT. OIT attempts to address the lack of trained operators by hiring and paying to train individuals to become operators. The award is for initiatives that have made a remarkable impact on environmental protection, the advancement of the water sector, and the betterment of their communities. Additionally, close coordination between operations and projects teams is critical to all of West Point's projects being completed efficiently and safely. As mentioned earlier, West Point must operate 24/7, 365 days in a confined footprint. This leaves little room for contractors and plant staff to complete their tasks. Plant staff have had to continue to operate and maintain equipment around the plant while assisting and working around the construction projects, which leads us to some of the challenges that the plant faces. Inflation has not only impacted all of our personal wallets, it has also impacted the cost of completing large infrastructure projects. Many WTD projects were planned prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and are now finally able to be implemented. Unfortunately, the delay in the impact of the pandemic has driven up the costs of goods and services. Another related impact is the lead time for parts and equipment. Lead time is the amount of time it takes from a part being ordered to it being delivered. Prior to the pandemic, lead times typically ranged from weeks to months. Now lead times can range from months to potentially years. This has required project teams and West Point staff to adjust and look farther ahead to plan purchases for projects and equipment. Additionally, industry knowledge has been hard to come by. Many skilled tradespeople are retiring and there aren't enough new tradespeople to replace them. This has led to a loss of institutional knowledge and number of contractors who know something about West Point's older systems or produce parts for these systems. This has made it challenging to refurbish or maintain equipment if there's not a manufacturer or skilled crew available to install it. Lastly, because of the loss of project progress during the pandemic and the timelines for many projects overlapping, I mentioned earlier how West Point is within this confined footprint. This confined space has required extremely close coordination between project teams to ensure safety and efficiency. West Point is pursuing a general contractor and construction manager contract, or GCCM, contract where one contractor would be in charge of multiple projects. This will help reduce the amount of space that different contractors require and create closer coordination between project teams and construction crews. Furthermore, West Point has started a capital program for the plant's projects where a program manager helps oversee and coordinate several project teams to find synergies, efficiencies, and improve communication and coordination. The program is well into its second year and has proven effective. Other WTD operations will be adopting similar capital programs in the coming years. WTD continues to collaborate closely with our regulatory agencies about the best way to improve our region's water and air quality. Our resource recovery team and public affairs team strive to find the best technologies and advocate for the best policies that strike a balance between improving our region's water and air and limiting our rate increases for our ratepayers. Because all these projects take place behind the walls of West Point and are necessary for the continued operation of treating wastewater, and the space and our time are limited, there are only a few opportunities for community members and organizations to weigh in. This meeting is one of them. Our goal at WTD is always to inform the community of any potential impacts a project will have on their daily life. Fortunately, because all these projects take place behind the walls of West Point, the impacts are limited. However, a few impacts are increased truck and vehicle traffic to bring materials and workers to the plant, viewing of cranes and taller equipment from trails, and an occasional and localized increase in odors near the plant while certain projects work on odor control facilities. Additionally, occasional early morning lighting may be seen while project work is being completed or equipment is being delivered before traffic increases. Notifications will always be sent out through a newsletter or signage to the community before these events occur. My commitment to you as the West Point Community Relations Planner is to respond to you within 24 hours, Monday through Friday, and have any issue resolved within 72 hours if possible. If you are a member of an organization and would like a briefing for your organization on West Point projects or West Point operations, please reach out and we can schedule one. We are currently not providing public tours of West Point due to the large amount of construction happening. If you scan the QR code on this page, it will take you to the West Point webpage where you can subscribe to the West Point newsletter to learn about the latest projects and operation updates, as well as receive notifications for any potential impacts. Plus, my contact info and West Point's emergency hotline number are listed on the page too. I would like to thank you for attending this presentation and giving us your time and energy as we weigh in on these important projects that are happening at West Point over the next decade.
Okay. Thank you all for your attention for our project updates. It's now time for our question and answer session. So as a reminder, please submit any questions you may have via the Q&A window through Zoom, not through the chat, and keep your questions focused on this project. We'll give folks a few minutes in case you're typing up some questions for us. In the meantime, we did receive a handful of questions before this meeting started, so I can go ahead and cover some of those. The first of those will be, how will this affect the surrounding homes around West Point Treatment Plant? And are there plans to improve public access to the waterfront?
Yes, that's a really good question. Really, these projects should have a really minimal, if not at all, impact on surrounding homes to the plant, considering the plant is fairly well obscured with the Discovery Park around it. Again, some of those impacts from time to time may include lights or being able to see cranes. There might be increased vehicle traffic depending on certain projects needing large deliveries. So for example, the power quality project earlier this year poured a very large slab for their building that required a large amount of trucks that came in early in the morning before kind of community traffic really picked up in the area. And we were able to get some notifications out to local neighbors and residents within the park to let them know about that and let them weigh in on any concerns that they had. Regarding the second question, that's not necessarily in our wheelhouse. That would be more of a Seattle Parks and Rec question, uh, just related to, they're the ones that kind of manage that roadway there in front of in front of West Point Treatment Plant. We partner with them to just kind of work on a few things and discuss different issues, but that area is more their responsibility, and it doesn't exactly pertain to the projects that we have going on at the plant at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Another question we received is, what is happening to prevent future spills?
Yeah, also a really good question. My big answer for this one is everything. That's the main point of a lot of these projects, is to do another major upgrade to the plant since 1990 when it upgraded to secondary, to make sure things are maintained as best they can be with the limited amount of parts and availability we have for different resources, to upgrade to different water quality standards as those slowly improve throughout the years. But what I will say is our goal is always to limit the number of spills. We can't ever say that there won't be any spills because there are certain processes in place to protect the plant from flooding or to protect community areas from flooding that may result in overflows or untreated overflows. And that's a safety measure just to protect the plant to ensure it can continue operating after an event, as well as continue to not flood areas that community or residents live in. So really the big answer is all these projects will help ensure that West Point limits the number of spills that happen in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. As a reminder, folks, please, if you have any burning questions, feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We have a couple more to get through, but again, feel free to jump in with any questions you might have today. Another question we received was, what are the long-term and short-term goals of the capital improvement projects happening at West Point Treatment Plant?
Yeah, so long-term goals, kind of relating to the previous question, is basically to ensure the plant can continue to treat wastewater to the highest water quality standards that are around. And that's also part of the short-term goals. The short-term goals relate to making sure operations can continue to get their work and their maintenance done on different processes around the plant, and to ensure that capital projects can also get their work done around the plant safely and efficiently. So long-term goals upgrade the plant to be able to meet the needs of the community and the changing environment, which relates to climate change and just the population increase that we've seen over the last 15 or so years in Seattle.
Wonderful. Thank you. It looks like we received a question from Krista in the chat or in the Q&A panel. She asks, what do you regard as the biggest risks, physical or financial, in these projects, and what is being done to mitigate them?
Yeah, also a really good question. I'll take a stab at it in terms of physical. It really comes down to that limited space within West Point. So for example, next year there's going to be more active construction projects happening, which means that the coordination between project teams and the plant staff is going to have to be really close together and tightly knit. That's been the ways that they've mitigated against those issues, is pursuing this GCCM contract that'll help kind of corral some projects under one roof, as well as kind of setting this capital program together to ensure that all the project managers are communicating with one another. We're coordinating with plant staff on different outages that we need to have in order to complete different project aspects, things of that nature. Those are a few things to mitigate them. Financial, that's a trickier question. What we're doing is, like I said in the presentation, is pursuing different funding resources, whether that's through the Department of Ecology or through the EPA. Unfortunately, the Inflation Reduction Act that passed in Congress, I think, last year or so, that mostly relates to transportation funding and doesn't necessarily tie into our wastewater funding. So we're working with Ecology and the EPA to kind of see what we can do along those channels to make sure we find that balance between getting these projects done in a timely manner and also not having to increase our rates so much that it impacts our community members and our ratepayers.
Great, thank you. Another question we have is from James. They say, you mentioned public tours are not available right now. Will you start offering tours again someday?
That's the hope. So currently there's just too much construction happening at the plant to safely conduct a tour throughout the facility. We like to do, they call a drop of water tour, where we will follow basically where water comes into the plant and then kind of follow it through the treatment process. Right now, that currently goes through several construction projects, and next year it will go through even more construction projects. So the goal is down the line, maybe when things settle down in a couple years, we can sit there and start offering public tours, or maybe we can do different one-off things from time to time. But they're going to be really limited opportunities until then to do public tours at West Point. If you are looking for a tour just of a wastewater treatment facility, our South Treatment Plant does conduct tours for the public at different times where you can get a tour of that facility, and they have a roughly similar treatment process to West Point. They just have a little more room than we do.
Perfect. Thank you. Looks like we just have one more question currently. So again, feel free to submit through the Q&A panel. This was a question we received prior to this meeting. And this person is asking if there are any upcoming RFPs for construction management services.
Yeah, that one, I'm sure there are at some point. I don't know the specifics for any projects off the top of my head. What I can do is I can offer you the webpage where we do post those RFPs and kind of contracts for construction management services, and that's the King County Procurement and Payables page. That's the one that's kind of where we list all of our future contracts and pieces like that. Again, if you're looking for something more specific, you can reach out to me after the meeting at my email, and I can try to direct you to, the specific project manager or payables person that can kind of give you a little more information than what we can provide tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. Looks like we have a question from Mike via the chat. So Mike is wondering, what is the approximate gallon yield that the plant is processing currently? What the future planned improvements will process? And lastly, what King County is projected to produce in wastewater?
I can answer a few of these, and I may pass the more specifics on to Tom if he has any, but the plant can do up to 440 million gallons of wastewater a day. Usually it does around 100 million gallons of wastewater a day. Let's see, what are future plan improvements? Really, I don't know if the overall amount of wastewater will necessarily improve too much. The biggest issue, as I understand it, which Tom can weigh in, is kind of the way that we receive the water at the plant will change. So you can picture a classic Seattle rainstorm in terms of how, because West Point's on a combined sewer system, so when we get rain, that rain flows into the same pipes as the wastewater, increasing the flow that hits the plant. When we get those rainstorms, we get that nice steady trickling of rain. That's easy peasy. That'll come through the plant just fine. It's when we get those dumping rainstorms that we get these high volumes of water in a short period of time that really flood the capacity of our pipes. And that can be a little tricky to manage the flow. Our operators do a fantastic job of switching some gears and monitoring some equipment to make sure that the water's going at the correct flow, getting treated before it gets discharged. So that's as far as I know on that. I don't know if Tom, you have anything else to offer for that.
No, you did a fine job. Our average summer flow is about 70 MGD, million gallons per day treated, and our average winter flows can be 100 to 130 million gallons a day. Peak flow is 440, like Ryan mentioned. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the RSP project that'll be taking place is with the new electric motors going in. Only 3 of those will have to operate to meet that 440 flow, and then that keeps one in reserve, and it can get pulled into service if it needs to. So I know WTD is working on additional projects throughout the county that'll kind of help be able to store water in different places. So one you might have heard of is the Ship Canal project. from Fremont to Wallingford, where we'll be able to store some wastewater for a certain amount of time before while the storm recedes at the time, and then we can get that over to West Point for treatment. So I'll look up the last part of that question to figure out what the future projections are for wastewater, and we'll include that in the summary for this meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So that covers all of the questions we received. So unless anyone else has additional questions they want to submit, I think we might be able to move on. Ryan, I'm not sure if you have anything else you wanted to add during this portion.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. I think the recording, at least on my end, had a little bit of a glitch on slide 13. It wasn't able to show the images, at least on my screen, for the primary effluent and raw activated sludge pipe replacement and refurbishment project. So that project will replace and restore the corroded pipes for the primary effluent or PE and the waste activated sludge piping, as well as flow meters, and installing new valves and improve seismic bracing. So that's going to help reduce pipe failures, increase resiliency to natural disasters, and make it easier for our plant staff to operate and maintain flow meters. So the cost of that project's 30.6 million, and construction will take place between 2025 through 2027 at different areas around the plant. So just wanted to make sure that project got covered. But otherwise, if you have any other additional questions or concerns or anything like that, or you want a little more detail on some of our answers, again, feel free to reach out to me at my contact information. That's just rharlow@kingcounty.com. Or .gov, I should say.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. So again, if we did not answer any questions that you had today, or you think of things after the fact, please feel free to contact Ryan. His email is posted on the screen now. And we appreciate you joining us this evening and hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.